And did you yell when he was, quote, on top of you, unquote? The lawyer asked me. Order! Order! Order in the court! The judge yelled. I don't know, honey. I don't think we should go to the party. It's an hour away, my mom said to my dad in the car on the way there. We were supposed to stay with one of my aunts, but she was gone all day, so my mom's old friend Melanie offered to watch over us. We shouldn't leave the children alone for the first time with Melanie for a whole night. I'm just worried, said my mom. I mean, Jane is 12 and Sarah's 9, but Cindy's only 2. She also has to take care of her own children too. I reassured her. Yeah, Mom, but Tom is already 15 and Kelly is 12. We can take care of ourselves, honestly. We rang the doorbell and Miss Melanie and Tom answered the door. We stood in front of the door like a picture-perfect family. We're all here! My mom smiled nervously. Miss Melanie laughed and said, Come on in, guys. My mom passed Cindy to Melanie and Sarah was already running towards Tom's Xbox screaming, Bye! Thank you so much for doing this, Melanie. We owe you one. My mom hugged her. Oh, don't even mention it. We're gonna have a blast, aren't we, little one? And then she smothered Cindy with kisses. You're gonna be okay? My mom asked me. Mom, I'll be fine. Have a good time, I said as I kissed and hugged them both, and then went inside. Tom followed me in. We were all taking turns playing on the Xbox pretty much the whole night. He also brought out his guinea pig, so when someone was playing, I would be playing with the guinea pig, and he was always wherever I was. A couple hours later, and it was time to sleep. Miss Melanie would sleep on the armchair with Cindy. Tom would sleep in his room. Kelly would sleep in her own room, and me and Sarah would sleep on the couch. I had fallen asleep, but around 2:13 a.m., I suddenly woke up. I realized I was thirsty, so I walked over to the kitchen to get some water. As I was putting away the cup, I saw Tom staring at me from the kitchen hallway. Oh my god, you scared me! What are you doing here? I asked him. I wanted to see if you wanted to play games on my phone with me, he said. Yeah, sure, why not? I said and followed him to his room. We were playing a game, but I quickly got bored. He kept telling me to wait, but I didn't want to be in there anymore. It was already late and I was tired too, so I got up to leave. He quickly got up before me and stood in front of the door. Move, I said, trying to move him aside. He looked at me tensely and said, no. Move, I said, and tried again, but this time he pushed me down on the bed and then climbed on top of me. He eventually stopped because he needed to use the bathroom. I quickly collected my pants on the floor and ran into the living room, thinking I would be safe from him, but it didn't end there. He came downstairs and then kept throwing small things at me while I tried to sleep. I couldn't sleep at all. My parents arrived at 4 a.m. in the morning to collect us. As soon as they arrived, I walked out of the house as quickly as I could. I left so fast that I didn't even bring my glasses and my phone. I just wanted to be out of there as fast as possible. I got into the car and sat in the back seat quietly while my mom and dad buckled Sarah and Cindy in the car. When they were saying goodbye to Miss Melanie, I glanced over and saw Tom standing behind her, staring at me, grinning. Later that day, after I had properly slept, I woke up and stared at the ceiling in disbelief. I felt so dirty, like I had done something really bad and disgusting. I thought about telling my mom, but I was too afraid that she wouldn't believe me. I mean, it's my word against his. Plus, what I did was so disgusting that maybe she would disown me. But as I laid there staring at the ceiling, I knew I couldn't do this all on my own. I needed her. So I gathered all my courage and walked into her room. Mom, I have to talk to you, I said when I walked in, and then I told her everything. As I was telling her, she was listening to me, but her eyes were tearing up. She was becoming more and more upset. When I was done, she held me tightly for so long and said, I'm sorry, honey. This is something I won't be able to give back to you, but we can still do something about it. And then she called the police. First, the police came to the house. They greeted my mom and spoke with her for a few minutes before coming to me. They told me and my mom that I had to go to the hospital together with them. When we got there, I had to go through what felt like the whole hospital accompanied by officers. Everyone was staring at me, wondering why I was there. Was she in an accident? Is she someone special? Did she do something wrong? Did someone take advantage of her? It was so hard. It felt excruciating. I disliked being around so many people so soon. When I sat down and waited to see a doctor, one of the officers came over and gave me some magazines. I can't read them, I told her. I left my glasses at his house. She looked at me sympathetically, put the magazines down, and went back to the other officers. After we were done there, they told me I had to go to another clinic. The same officers came over to us as we were getting into the car. "Ma'am," she said, "we'll drop you off at the clinic, but we'll give you your privacy as it's not necessary for us to be there." Then she turned to me and said, "But I will go over to his house to pick up your glasses and drop it off at the clinic for you, okay?" I smiled and thanked her. I thought everything up to this point was already really overwhelming, but the clinic was the hardest part. There, I talked with a woman and had to tell her everything that happened to me. It was really hard. I still felt intense, unbearable guilt. Then, I was examined and had to sign up for an intensive care therapist. The next few months, my whole life revolved around what had happened. Therapy took up most of my days, and when it didn't, I didn't really feel like doing anything anyway. That summer, I didn't go outside at all, and didn't talk to anyone else except for my family and my therapist. I just stayed inside and always kept to myself. And then, in September, a court meeting was finally called. My mom had high hopes that this boy would be put to justice. The entire day was just horrifying. Tom was there with his dad because his mom couldn't make it. I even had to take the stand to tell everyone what happened again. When I was up there, their lawyer was so cruel to me. He kept asking me questions that made it seem like it was my own fault, but I held it together because I didn't want Tom to see me cry or upset. But he just sat there staring at me the same way he did that night when he answered me, "No." Then their lawyer asked me, "So he asked you to follow him up to his room and you agreed?" "Yes, because he asked me if I wanted to play a game with him on his phone," I answered. "I didn't know he interrupted me. "Just please confirm with us that you voluntarily went up with him to his room," he asked me. "Yes," I answered and looked down. "And did you yell when he was, quote, on top of you, unquote?" the lawyer asked me. "No," I answered. "I didn't call for help, but I was crying and begging him to get off me." Then he answered, "Yes, but you didn't yell. And if you were really being taken advantage of, you would have yelled so that someone could come save you. As I mentioned before, Your Honor," he turned to the judge, "it's not just statistics that tell us that when a woman is about to be taken advantage of, she would yell for someone to help. She went upstairs in the middle of the night voluntarily with a boy she had been playing with all day. Your Honor, this is just teenagers being teenagers. No further questions." Then he turned around and sat down. The judge ruffled through some paperwork and then announced, "Okay, I'm going to need a recess. Let's meet back in 1 hour." 1 hour had passed when we came back into the courtroom. Everyone sat down after the judge came back in anticipation of the verdict. As the judge was speaking, I couldn't help but glance over to Tom for a second. I think for the first time ever, he was actually scared. I find the defendant not guilty. Charges against the defendant are dismissed, but the defendant will still serve 12 months probation. My mom stood up and shouted, "How could you accuse my daughter of lying against that little monster? All the evidence piled up against him, and you're just going to let him get away with what he did to my daughter?" She kept shouting, but I looked over to Tom and his father, and they were both looking at me and laughing. "Order, order, order in the court," the judge yelled, and then my mom stormed out. As I walked past them, they just stood there smirking. I wanted to walk up to their stupid faces and scream and slap that smirk off their faces, but I didn't. I instead turned away and walked out to find my mother. It has been about half a year since the whole thing happened, and I'm getting better. I've started going outside. I don't need therapy anymore, and I'm not too scared to go in crowded public places. I want everyone that listens to this story to know that it is never your fault. There are very bad people out there, like Tom, but just know they will get what is coming to them. It's not about legal or illegal, it's about right versus wrong. Never be too scared to speak out. Your body belongs to you, and no one should be able to take that away from you.